That is Mario. So
thank you for coming. This is the last event for the Caribbean Aquaculture Network for 2022, and we plan to have many more next year. So I put in the chat box, if you have not subscribed to our network, please do so you can learn more about the events. For those who don't know, I am Julianne Russo. I'm an aquaculture scientist from Jamaica, and I'm currently based in Italy. And my specialty is biosecurity and nutrition. I do a lot of work with feed manufacturing, as well as looking at nutrition to prevent fish diseases. I started this network just so that we could start promoting aquaculture in the Caribbean and bring aquaculturists together. It's not only tilapia. We have discovered that there are so many other sectors that are kind of working in isolation. And so this network is to bring people from all over the Caribbean and globally together so that we can learn who is everyone, what's everyone doing. And so we don't want to have secrets, and we want everyone to share what they're doing. So before we bring on Dean, I would just like everyone to introduce who they are, where they're from, and what's their interest. And if you'd like to just put your email in the chat box. So to start, hi, Martha.
Unmute. And hi, I'm sitting in Napa, California. My interest in this comes two channels. I have been doing some writing for the Ocean Cleanup, which has been involved in the Kingston Harbor sussing up for a few years. And through that, plus my interest in sailing and regattas within the area, I was pleased to find a couple more anchors, being the seaweed and the mariculture and oysters. And I think that I had found Kee Farms maybe just off of a LinkedIn post. And and the photos. I told the boys, I told the team, love the photos. I did many years in the photo industry, and it's refreshing to see something just a little bit different, young and with a lot of energy. So I'm here to absolutely listen and finally hear a bit more from Dean about what they're working on.
Welcome. And if you'd like to share your email or information, you can do so in the chat box. Ruth.
Hi. I'll try to. Hello. Sorry,
Hi.
I am on the go.
So yeah, you're not stable. You're not stable.
A PhD seaweed farming in Belize. Yes, it's quite unstable. And yeah, so I'm doing looking at local adaptations employed by seaweed farmers in Belize. So happy to be on the call, and I'm very interested to learn about the Kee Farms. So thank you.
Is this the first time you're meeting Dean from Kee Farms? Great,
yes.
Great link up.
Thank you, Dr. Julie.
Matthew. Is Matthew not hearing? Okay. Hi, Stacy. Thank you for joining. Stacy, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button.
That's
Hi,
okay.
I'm Stacey Williams from Puerto Rico. I'm currently culturing sea urchins and corals, and we're interested in actually culturing macroalgae, specifically ulva. So I find this talk interesting. Yeah, and I am a co-owner of a small nonprofit organization here in Puerto Rico called Institute for Socio-Ecological Research. So I'm excited to hear the talk. Thanks.
Thanks, Stacy. Matthew? Okay. Dean, are you ready?
Unmute. Hi, sorry about that. Yes, I am ready. I will just start sharing screen. So let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Yes. So I'm very happy that you're here, and thank you so much for coming, Dean, who is the co-founder of Kee Farms. And Dean, I hand it over you to tell us more about your startup and your whole program.
All right, thank you so much for this space, Dr. Russo. So before I start, I would like to thank you guys for coming out. It might not be a lot of you, but we the more the merrier, and we always need help with these stuff. So you guys seeing my screen? Are you guys seeing Matthew and Kee in the water?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So let me just start off by saying just reintroducing myself. My name is Dean. I have a background in software development. I'm not a marine biologist. I have a love for the ocean. I cannot swim well. As Matthew will tell you that I can barely dive. But we came together in 2020, saying that we wanted to do something for fisherfolk and for the environment. And we're going a little bit in depth. So before we start, okay, so this is the team. We are a regenerative ocean farm network focused on climate change mitigation. Our premise is that fisherfolk can use the same skills they have harnessed over the years to actively participate in climate action and ocean regeneration while still being able to feed their families and acquire a sustainable income while doing so. So they can do this by, growing seaweed and other organisms like oysters and sea cucumbers. For this conversation, I would like to talk more about seaweed. The oyster aspects of it is a little bit trickier because you just leave the oysters in the water to grow and they just grow. But in terms of seaweed, I wanted to focus on that a little bit more because there is a large opportunity for this space. So the type of seaweed we're growing is called Gracilaria. We're growing both Gracilaria B and Gracilaria D. We also wild harvest sargassum. So let's talk a little bit about the team for a second and where we are. But we started in 2020, as I said, and we officially started growing seaweed this year at the Alligator Head Foundation in Port Antonio, Jamaica. So this is the team. It's a pretty solid core team of environmental scientists and tech guys. We all believe that sustainable entrepreneurship can be done by partnering with the community and key environmental stakeholders to improve the lives and create a sustainable livelihood and regenerate life underwater. For us, we want to create like the first ocean farm network in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. And then we want to create the legal framework for it because locally and in other territories, there's no real framework for ocean activities, the framework for farming, the framework for agricultural farming, but there's none really for this. So we want to help create that there. We also want to help 1,000 fisherfolk move away from what we call subsistence fishing to having their own ocean farms by the year 2027. So in the next 5 years, we want to do that. And our biggest goal is to remove 100 megatons of carbon from the ocean and atmosphere by the year 2035. And a bit more about our team. We have Matthew P here, and we have Floyd. It seems the wrong picture for Floyd came over. But this is our team. It's mostly, as it is right now, men, but we're going to be adding on about 4 more women to the team, a grant writer, a full-time grant writer, and 3 more marine biologists to the team here. So we'll just talk a little bit about Alligator Head Foundation. So Alligator Head Foundation is a marine sanctuary out in Portland. They're tasked with, helping the environment. And we work very closely with them to help preserve and restore the marine ecosystem. They are what we call, they're our sponsors. So we receive money from them, I think about 2 million Jamaican dollars from them and the British Embassy to fund this project. They provide gear, technical expertise, and what's in it for them is that the fisher folk within their communities can earn a steady income because they can now farm seaweed and oysters. So let's talk about the big problems, what we're having. So on the left on the screen, I have some screenshots from last year actually about things affecting fisher folk. And for our fisher folk, they're artisanal fisher folk, so they don't do commercial fishing. And for them, they're just rely on nearshore fishing. And they're being impacted very heavily by climate change manifested through either ocean acidification, rising sea levels, and fish migration to cooler and deeper waters. In recent times, they're catching what we call fewer fish, smaller fish, and poor quality fish. I would call it trash fish here. So fisher folk with their skill sets need a reliable, profitable, environmental, sustainable way to generate income. On the macro level, there is just way too much carbon in the atmosphere, and the biodiversity just being depleted at such a drastic rate in our oceans that we just don't have an answer for it. So what we are trying to do in our big picture is to create a network of fisher folk and provide them with a competitive compensation for their work, while helping to mitigate the impacts of climate change by reducing ocean acidification, sequestering carbon, and strategically cleaning our waters with oysters. For us, we want to create an avenue of like a reprieve from their current socio-economic concerns, while possibly contributing to the eventual return of erased biodiversity to the Caribbean waters. In a nutshell, we want to teach them how to grow seaweed. Sorry, my dogs happen to go crazy right now. Let me just pause for a second and move away from where they are. Give me a second, guys.
Welcome, Noel. Can you hear me? Welcome, Kireno. Hi, Kireno.
Thank you. This is Noel.
Welcome.
Thank you.
While we wait on Dean, would you like to introduce yourself? We did that previously.
Well, I'm Noel Thompson. I've previously worked with tilapia and marine shrimp, freshwater shrimp also. I'm in the aquaculture business now for at least 30 years. I've worked with the government and the private sector. So I'm here to learn and to share.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Dean, you want to continue?
Yes, my dog suddenly stopped. So I apologize.
No, I didn't hear them.
Oh, you guys didn't hear the dogs?
Well, there was not that much noise in the background.
Okay. That's fine then. Okay, they were going crazy here. So if you guys not hearing, that's great. So as I was saying, we want to show fisher folk how to grow seaweed. A part of that is harvesting and collecting. Everybody know the seaweed we're talking about is the same iris moss when dried. So that iris moss can be used in a multitude of sectors, and we'll go into that in a little bit, which is food, feed, fiber, fertilizer, biofuel, biochar, biotechnology, and is also used in pharmaceutical and cosmetics. We also want to create like a middleman platform. So the platform is that they sell it to us, and we can either process it ourselves or sell it to third parties, or we give them the channels to just sell it straight to the third parties if they can hit the quota that these third parties want. If not, we just come together as a group and we just buy all the seaweed as needed for them. We also want to sequester carbon, and I will talk about that in the next slide. So what the whole carbon trading thing is, and I know we have a lot of people here now. So to bring it back, carbon trading is right now, countries across the world are basically racing to mitigate the effects of climate change. Right now, we can't go out in the sun and play like we used to. Walking in the sun for 10 minutes is a harrowing experience. If anybody walks even noon time at noon for like 10 minutes, it's pretty rough. And most of us used to run up and down in the sun when we were younger. We can't do that anymore, right? We can't do, children don't even go outside during the day anymore. So the sun is that hot. So now countries and companies are trying their best to mitigate this, but the countries and companies are the organizations that pollute the most, that pollute the atmosphere the most with carbon. What they're doing and what we have been a part of is that they want to mitigate this effect by growing trees, in this case, planting seaweed and that type of stuff. 1 ton of carbon is being sold for a little bit over $100. So it's a very lucrative 100 US, that is, and it's a very lucrative way to earn money. And it's one of the ways we are looking to earn money so we can scale up into becoming a big player within the industry. And that's just one of the solutions that we've come forward. So right now I'm halfway through my presentation, and I wanted to just give you guys some time to ask me some questions if you have any, and then I will go into the rest of it. So like 5 minutes, we can just come up with some questions if you have it.
Does anyone have any questions? Ruth?
Hi, yes, excellent initiative. I really love to see, you know, the young persons involved, and but very innovative. I had a question regarding the trading. And I know you mentioned you guys are tapping into sequestrating carbon with using seaweed, but is that carbon, is the seaweed that you collect? I mean, are you collecting the seaweed, or are you just leaving the seaweed there to disintegrate into the ocean bottom? Like, and how do you tap into carbon trading benefits so that, you know, you could expand? Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. And I won't lie to you, I'm not the greatest carbon trader. I understand the concept, but the nitty-gritty details I can explain, but like it may be a slightly wrong, so don't quote me on this. So how would we tap into this market and how it works? For you must have a large quantity of carbon to trade. So companies are looking for, or organizations are looking for 10,000 tons of carbon sequestered every year. That at the minimum. That at $100 US is, I think, $1 million worth of carbon. So they're looking for that amount. So it has to be very large scale. And to do that, a lot of organizations can't necessarily meet this target. So what they do is come together and then do it. So for example, you ever see commercials where a company says, hey, we planted 1,000 trees in the Amazon. That's them sequestering carbon, because they are not the actual persons doing it, but they pay these organizations to do it. And then they say, okay, we sequestered this amount of carbon because we planted these amount of trees in the Amazon. That's just one example of it. For seaweed though, I would say we don't believe in dumping the seaweed. We believe in actually using it, because it's something that's actually useful for us. And I think for our organization, we don't want to grow the seaweed and sink it. I think it's a little bit of a waste right there. So we're looking into sequestering it by using other byproducts, which is what I'll go into in the next couple of slides, like biochar, activated carbon, etc., biofuel, bioplastics, and the whole idea behind sequestering carbon for those that just joined in is that when you sequester it, you have to keep it in an innate state for a certain amount of time. And we have to do, for example, is that if we grow the seaweed and people eat the seaweed and it processes through their body, it's not necessarily captured, or it's not necessarily innate. It goes back into the atmosphere. So we have to create and be, creative and create byproducts that would keep the carbon locked in for a certain amount of time. And that's something that we'll talk about in the next slide. But thank you so much for the question. We really don't get a lot of carbon related questions or carbon trading related questions.
Yes, Stacy has a question.
Okay, great. Hi, Stacy.
Yeah. Hi, could you go into more details of like how you grow the algae, like how much you produce, how quickly it grows, some information about that?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that question, Stacy. So for us, I would say we're growing Gracilaria, which is one of the faster growing seaweeds. It actually takes about 2 weeks to 6 weeks to actually grow. In our case, in some of the photos, I'm trying to see if I can show you guys a really nice photo that we took of a full grown one right here. It took us about 3 weeks to get to that size, and that would be considered mature. We use the raft methodology, and we're having some problems with it. I'll be truthful. We haven't had a full harvest as of yet because we've been facing what we call heavy herbivory and our first couple cases of perennial larceny. So we're kind of brainstorming right now as a company or a team how we can secure it. But they're just use the rafts, we tie it to the rafts, and the next slide will actually show you how we actually do it.
So
any more questions?
Yeah, are you collaborating with any research institutes to, look at innovation and how to use these products?
Yes, yes. We have many different collaborations right now. We are collaborating with the Florida Institute of Technology, mostly on sargassum, because we also deal a little bit with sargassum right now. And we are also focusing a little bit on Gracilaria and activated carbon, biochar, all those stuff. Those are really coming over from the researchers, and we're just trying to implement it at scale to get where we want to go. But yes, we're working with different organizations, and we're open to working with as many organizations as possible. We're open to sharing knowledge. A big part of what we want to do in the future is every research paper that we're in or taking part of is to put it on our website for free so that other people can replicate what we're doing, and we can help them, to replicate these findings.
Are you the only startup at the moment working with seaweed in Jamaica?
Oh, well, I would say growing seaweed, as far as I know, growing it, I would say yes. But in terms of sargassum and that, no, we're far from the only organization actually doing. But there are people that grow seaweed. I wouldn't say like people that grow it for years, etc. I wouldn't call them a startup, but they're there. So there is a wide open space for it, but there's not a lot of people that actually grow it. How we are growing it, they either dive for it, which isn't necessarily sustainable, because every time they dive and take up a ton or so of it, it takes still, although it grows really fast, it still takes some time to grow back. And when they dive and take it up, they actually rip up corals and rip off the stones off of it where the seaweed was stuck on. So it really does damage the ecosystem when they dive for seaweed.
Okay, so you're doing some kind of community outreach to let them know not to dive for it.
Yeah, so that's a part of it's a part of why we wanted to show them how to grow it and create this network. Because as we said before, there's a big knowledge gap right here. And we see that in this space, we can be a part of helping fisherfolk move away, because the people who actually dive for it are fisherfolk. They know the value of iris moss, but they don't know how to grow it and what are the best steps for them, how to grow it, etc. So they just dive for it, sell it to people on the road, especially in St. Thomas and Portland. And other from that, they don't really grow it or anything.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Right, you did. So let's go into the product. So what we do at first and how we've been approaching it is we have wildcraft seaweed that grows at the bottom of the ocean. We harvest the seaweed from the ocean using local divers and some of our team, and then we run it through a team that kind of removes any parasites from it. We dive in St. Thomas at this place called White Waters. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Matthew, but I think it's called White Waters. We dive there, but we dive in other parts of the island too.
Yes, White Horses.
White Horses, yes, White Horses. I keep calling it the wrong thing. Yes, White Horses. I knew I got it wrong when I said it. Thank you, Matthew. We do it like that. So we dive there and then we'll put it in a big fancy machine that runs it through like a UV light. And from there, it removes any contaminants, any parasites from it. And then we introduce it into our new space. As we said before, we're working with the Alligator Head Foundation. They actually provide the space, but it's still a marine sanctuary. So we can't introduce any parasites into their water. So we have to follow that process. Then we go into the water, we tie the seaweed onto the rafts into the open ocean. You can do it from land too, so you can actually tie it on the raft and then bring it into the water. But we started to do it in the sea at first, and we kind of like doing it because we're just sitting in the water tying it. And then after 4 weeks, the seaweed is harvested. So we cut a bit of it off and then let it grow back, because we just continue growing every time. And then we dry it. And after that, we dry and sell to processors. So that's really the process. So we're going to talk about market size now, but seaweed is extremely big business. The entire market size is about 16.12 billion, but the entire ocean economy is worth like $3 trillion. And the international market, most of the seaweed is used as food. So seaweed, everybody knows sushi, iris moss, etc. We have kelp burgers. I've been reading about kelp dairy, kelp milk, kelp cheese, all types of stuff now, kelp bacon. So it's all over the place. But some on that market outside of food is used to make agar and carrageenan, which is used in food processing and cosmetics. Our market right now, of course, is the Caribbean, where companies mostly use it for food processing. But the company that we're one of our first companies that we're selling to right now is using it to create agar, which they use in their dog food as like a binding agent for the ingredients there. And at the same time, the other companies that we're planning to sell to, at least, they use it as fertilizer. And we're going to go a little bit more into those. So there are a lot of potential opportunities here for companies, for the country, for the region, right? So as it is right now, a report came out recently that 82.5% of the Caribbean Ocean is prime real estate for growing seaweed. So this is millions of hectares of water. That is great for growing seaweed. It's not in the way of shipping channels, etc. And so it's at the level where you can easily cultivate the seaweed. At the same time, climate change advocates have for years pushing for more eco-friendly materials and techniques. This has propelled like companies and organizations to invest more in research of alternatives. So seaweed is used more frequently in the development of byproducts along the value chain. For most of you guys, you don't know that seaweed is used in dog food, as I said earlier, as a binding agent in household cleaners, in fertilizers, in ice cream, in makeup products, in milk products, such as the company that's called Soya. They use seaweed as an ingredient, skincare creams, toothpaste, yogurt, supplements. So anything, I will talk a little bit about agar in a second, but anything where you can use water, it's like as a water replacement, agar is best because it's just really great. For us, we're using we want to talk a little bit about activated carbon. So in a sense, it's basically like a porous element that traps compounds, mainly organic, present in a gas or liquid, and it has a high rate of effectiveness. So what people use it for right now, are researching it to use for, is to remove it. It's a purifying agent. So like air cleaners use it. I think ACs use it. I'll confirm that one. And any air purifier system uses it as a way to purify. It also can remove carbon from the atmosphere, which is a big deal for a lot of organizations. A lot of research is being pumped there. And now we have the agar, which is basically for the scientists. If you ever work with a petri dish, that little thing there is what's in it is the agar. It can also be used in food or as a gelatin replacement, and it's just used in a lot of industries. Then we have biochar, which is a charcoal-like substance. This basically made from is basically burning organic matter from agricultural forestry waste, such as what we call biomass, and is in a process called pyrolysis. So biochar is used for soil remediation. We can use it for wastewater treatment and other stuff, because it's basically a great way to just remove stuff. So that's what they use it for. And then we have other stuff like fertilizers. The fertilizers that we use are coming from algae, and they are better than the fertilizers that are made with artificial nitrogen, etc., which is a big issue right now. With the war in Ukraine, the price of fertilizer skyrocketed recently, and then a knock-on effect is that the price of food rose, and that is just a huge market right there. If we can sell seaweed as a fertilizer, specifically sargassum seaweed as a fertilizer that, sargassum just flows into our shores, we can earn literally billions of dollars, because the market is there, and it's a cheaper, much cheaper, because the biomass is basically free. You just need to go out and collect it. Last but not least, is bioplastic from seaweed and biofuels. We won't be doing bioplastics and biofuels because it's kind of hard to find the expertise for it. So if you guys have the expertise in it, let me know. Let me know. So we want to talk about our big picture. We want to create the ocean network using the 7,100 fisherfolk we have around Jamaica, and then replicate this model within other Caribbean territories. And then we want to create this business opportunity for them where they can sell it to us or sell it to a third party as long as they can earn income from it, that would be great. Then we ourselves as an organization, we want to move away from the raft methodology that is really harder to scale by, and then using machine, because outside of the Caribbean Ocean is very deep, so we can't use the methodology, the nearshore methodology. We'd have to use machinery to actually process and harvest the seaweed when we put it out there. And then the last thing we really want to do is to create green factories on our Jamaican soil in the Caribbean to process the seaweed and not export it to be processed, which might also increase our carbon footprint. We just want to process it here. So we want to talk about like how the Caribbean on a whole can benefit. From a climate point of view, seaweed are the engine of environmental restoration and contribute to 50 to 80% of the planet's oxygen supply, almost 45 times more than trees. So that's from a climate point of view. We'll be removing a lot of carbon just by growing seaweed. It won't be what we call sequestered. It will be, unless we use byproducts that will last for years, as I was saying earlier, when I was explaining, I think somebody asked me a question. It won't be sequestered, but it will be removed from the atmosphere. It can also play a huge role in, I would say, creating new commodities in our economy that lead to carbon neutral output. So we want the environment to come first. And so we're thinking about ways that we can create products that help the environment instead of harming it. From a jobs point of view, we can employ a significant percentage of the fisher folk and also revitalize that community. And at the same time, we can also, we'll be adding engineers and all that stuff. And this is a very easily replicatable model. So other countries can do that. So this is our progress to date. We have gotten a lot. We started our pilot this year. We got our first 5 customers potentially. And what we're going to do next is designing and patenting machinery that can make the harvesting process more efficient. We also want to work with manufacturers to help create the byproducts on Jamaican soil in the region or regionally in the next 2 to 5 years. And we want to go at light speed. For us, currently, we need land. Our pilot project is being run out of the Alligator Head Foundation, which is important, as I said before, but we're seeking to buy or lease 3 properties through the help of investors. But finding suitable land is hard. So if any of you guys have any seafront properties or access to any seafront properties, let me know. And then we love technical expertise. We are young. We admit that we may not see the big picture. We may not know everything that's happening. And we're just here learning as we go along. We love help from you guys. This is one of the biggest groups of aquaculturists in the Caribbean, actually. So it would be great if you guys have any expertise that you can share with us. That would be lovely. And this is just our end. This is where we are. We are Kee Farms. We're on a mariculture farm growing seaweed and oysters, and we want to create byproducts from the seaweed. We're located in Port Antonio, and to learn more about us, you can visit our website at www.keefarms.com or shoot us an email at info@keefarms.com. If you want to reach out to me specifically, just say dean@keefarms.com, and that's it. Thank you guys so much. If you guys have any more questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Dean. That was really incredible. This is so impressive. I have one question. So have you started training any of the fish farmers? I mean, not fish farmers, the fishermen?
Yes, we have started to train about 7. They're from the Portland community. One of them is Floyd. I accidentally didn't put his picture, but if I go all the way back, let me just show you a picture of Floyd. You see Floyd a lot in the photo, so this is Floyd alongside Matthew. And this is more Floyd. So Floyd is from the community. He's the first we're training, and Floyd will be like an ambassador for us to help us to go out and train more of the fisher folk as we go forward.
What is the feedback? Because I've always heard that you know, in trying to get fishermen to change their way of life is sometimes a problem. Is there are they receptive to learning something new?
So far, we have approached it from a community standpoint, and we heard that at the start of when we just started. So what we did was to create a plan of action there. Our plan of action was to show the benefits of it, which is if you grow seaweed, you will earn income. At the same time, you don't have to go far to fish. At the same time, the fish eat seaweed, so they will want to come back into your waters to eat the seaweed. So you'll get the seaweed, you get the fish back if you grow seaweed, you get the fish back if you do oysters, you get the fish back if you do certain activities. And then we just show them the benefit. Like we did a pitch similar to what parts of this is actually from the pitch that we sent to them, or we show them and then they make the decision. Unfortunately, we are still working on methodology. As I said before, we lost a lot of our crop from herbivory. So we're working on how we approach it. For us, because we're in a marine sanctuary, we have a little bit more fish than at other locations. So we also are working with marine sanctuaries across the island to get this done. So we want to see if we can replicate the process in different ways to stop the herbivory, which is crabs, fish, and turtles eating our seaweed, and urchins too. Urchins. Yes.
Has this ever been done, like for instance, on land in a hatchery? Is that possible?
I would say yes, it's possible. It's been done. I haven't really spoken to many people that are doing it. I know for our species, I don't think it would be great for them. And Matthew, you can correct me here. But there are, and anybody can correct me here, but for me, I don't think this type of algae would be great for growing on land or inland. And I think it would be a waste if we do it like that, because if we grow it on land, it won't absorb the nutrients from the water in the sea, and it might be an easier way to do it, but it won't be as, good. But yes, people have grown it in labs. One of our at the Florida Institute of Technology, they're actually growing it in labs, Gracilaria specifically, to prove that it removes carbon from the water. So they're one of our research partners doing it that way.
Any other questions?
Yes, I do.
Hi, Ricardo. Can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, hi everyone. Good evening. I'm Ricardo Morris. I think that's, is that enough just to say my name?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, for now. Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to at least a half of your presentation. My apologies for missing the first part, but I want to zero in on some of the challenges that you have faced, and that's probably a loaded question, because I'm sure you've faced a lot of them. But one of them, I think you answered just now, is identification of suitable areas. Have you identified what constitutes suitable areas? So I think I was thinking along the lines where if you have identified potential areas that, you know, can be developed, then the process can be a little bit more easier. For example, I know that Alligator Head area quite well. And I know similar areas exist in Portland Bight, similar areas exist along the South Coast particularly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have already done that kind of, I don't know, scouting or whatever, to kind of identify potential areas and what characteristics, not just environmental characteristics, but, you know, whatever institutional things you might need, or what would be needed to advance this or face this kind of challenge. Have you guys looked at that?
Yes, not as in depth as your question, but yes. For us, it's already known what type of waters that we would need. Jamaica doesn't technically have it, or if we do have it, it's used as beachfront properties or really nice beaches. So what we need is areas. So think Hellshire, right? Think Hellshire Beach is very calm. You can grow, you can wade into the water. That type of waterfront we need. However, that type of waterfront is at a premium. So for our methodology, we had to kind of shift it slightly to change it in terms of the physical geography, to change it. That's why we want to move away from using the raft methodology, because it doesn't scale well into deeper waters. Because we can still move around in boats and such, but not a lot of, we want the fisherfolk that's working with us not to have to go too far. With that said, in terms of institutional, good roads, internet if possible, and electricity. For our purposes, though, we have actually identified land in St. Thomas and land in St. Elizabeth, but there are parts of Jamaica pretty much all over the place that we can actually grow seaweed, but is either we have to grow it outside of eyesight, or very well, like for example, if we reach out to the Sandals team and say we want to grow seaweed here, it would be like 2 miles offshore, which is why we had to change our methodology, or we are changing our methodology to reflect that, in terms of how we grow, and we have other considerations too, such as weather. We haven't really gotten a big hurricane in a bit, but we have to recognize that we are still in that area to get really big weather effects. So we have to choose areas like Alligator Head Foundation that has a bay that can mitigate the effects of adverse weather conditions. But thank you so much for your question, Robert. We may have to go back to the drawing board a little bit just based off your question.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking the Portland Bight area, but then you mentioned electricity. But then you mentioned electricity, and then I kind of said, oh, maybe that not so well. But on the north coast, 2 miles north, you're in the deep. So on the north coast, it's kind of your space is really limited. So my mind, when I think of Alligator Head and areas of similar kind of, you know, terrain, I'm thinking South Coast. So, but I would suggest perhaps, probably you have done it already. You have relationships with the special fisheries conservation areas, and you could I think that's a start. At least a conversation, I think, would be very useful in identifying. But I think that kind of groundwork would be very useful for you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And the long-term goal of what you're trying to do, to identify potential areas, because when you already identify areas that you can see as suitable, then, you know, it's kind of a big part of the work is already done.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree. That's actually a great point, Robert. we will spend some more time actually looking through the areas, because we found areas, but we gave it very, because we understood that Jamaica just didn't have I think they call it low tidal areas like Tanzania or even Grenada and Belize and other nations that grow seaweed. We have a lot of them, but they're beachfront property now, so we had to kind of either we just go off in the deep from the get-go, which is why we have to move away from the raft methodology. Even though it may work, it will still consume more resources for us. But for fisher folk, they can still use the raft methodology. Yeah, sorry.
So what was the source of the info? I don't remember the percentage that you quoted. Well, there was a quotation, the percentage of the Caribbean ocean that is suitable for seaweed growth. Was it percentage of the coastal area or just the entire ocean? Or
just the entire ocean? It's 82.5%. I will, if possible, I will confirm the quote and send it to you where we got it from. I think it was from NOAA though. So I think it's from NOAA, but I can confirm and send it to you, Robert. But I think it's 82.5%.
Ricardo.
Oh, sorry, Ricardo. Yeah, apologies.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, but I think it dropped your email and I can forward it to you if needs be.
Yeah, sure. But just one thing I heard and I found a little bit curious as well. So how big is the problem of herbivory? Because herbivory, more fish is actually a selling point, but it's also a disadvantage here. So how do you see that going forward? Because on one hand, I hear selling of seaweed growth for attracting fish, but yet fish may, be a negative as well. So I was just curious when I heard that. It was kind of.
Sorry, somebody chipped in?
No, go ahead. I think it's the background.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that again, Ricardo. So herbivory is a massive issue because we're doing it in the water, but where we chose is a marine sanctuary, so we do have more fishes in that area. What we have chosen to do, I have two ways to do it. I'll just bring my screen over. We reach out to some people because we're not the only persons actually doing something similar to this. Let me just close this for a second and then bring it up here. My WhatsApp chat. All right, the MacBook is not MacBooking for me. All right, give me a second. So you can have an idea what they're doing, but in a nutshell, yes, here. In a nutshell, what they're doing is this is a setup from Bangladesh. So what what they're doing here is they're growing the same species as us, Gracilaria, but they use fishing net material to have to kind of stop the herbivory from the bottom, because it's really just crabs, turtles, and fish that are eating it, but they cannot bite through this material, right? So what we're going to be doing in the near future is retrofitting ours with these really fine mesh netting. But there is the only difference for us is that we don't want to use these bottles that they're using here to keep it afloat, because plastic will leach back into the ocean, and we as we said before, we have to think about ways to do this that don't negatively harm the environment. So we're either thinking of using the two ideas that we came up with here are using the same netting material and letting it just sink in the water and then covering it like a type of clamshell and then sewing it around. So the seaweed just grows in this netting material on the raft and that's it. Or we use pool noodles that people learn how to swim on, and that would keep it afloat at the top. And the the netted material will be taught at the end so that the fish, the turtles, and the crabs can't eat it. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
I really like what you guys are doing. I'll probably send you some private messages via
Sure,
LinkedIn.
no problem. If you need, you can reach out to me at Dean at Kee Farms. Dean at Kee Farms, and we can move from there.
Yeah, sure.
Any
No
more
problem.
questions?
This is really interesting, Dean.
Thank you so much, Dr. Russo. I was very nervous because there's so many aquaculturists in your group. I was like, when are they gonna say I'm talking foolishness? But
no, but this is what we need. This is exactly the whole point of the group, is to be open and to share the information, and you know, nothing tried, nothing done. So in doing any kind of research, there will be challenges, and it's how to overcome challenges. And somebody else out there might be able to give you some ideas of how to overcome the challenges. So you're not working in isolation. So I'm really happy that you are being quite open with the work, and we really need to have more, you know, aquaculturists come forward and be as open with their work, because that's the only way to grow fast. Like you said, you want to move fast. You can't, you know, you can't just make the wheel from scratch, right? To get the information that's out there.
yeah, and so that's why we're pretty open for any questions, any concerns that you guys have. Just let me know. I can be reached out at any point in time. I'm pretty much the easiest guy to find in Jamaica. I'm on every social media platform, and you guys can reach out to me with questions, with concerns, with proposals, anything you guys have. We will happily help. I didn't talk much about oysters. Hopefully, you know, you guys invite me back next year.
Yes,
and
you have to come back.
A little bit more about what we want to do with oysters. But because I didn't want to make the seaweed presentation too long. When I looked at it, it was like 40 slides, and I'm like, no.
And I'd like to learn at another time. I'd like to learn more about the actual startup from the entrepreneurial point of view.
Okay.
You know, to have, if there are any other younger persons interested in doing a business, an aquaculture business, a model, if you have some sort of model to show them how they can actually get into it. I mean, you know, how you got into your startup. I think that's very important. But I want to thank you so much for coming. I hope everyone has subscribed to our network. It's in the chat box. I put it there, and we hope to have more of these events next year. We want to have you come back, Dean, and maybe come on a panel and with some other people, maybe globally, you know, from Tanzania, or other people that you have probably met, to discuss more about seaweed and have another opportunity to speak about oysters. So I want to thank everybody for coming. This session is recorded, and we will be putting it on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe to our channel and help us grow. And I put everything in the chat box, so please take a look and go over there. And are there any other last words?
Yeah, that sounds like me. So for my last words, we think that we have to create a future business landscape that is environment first. For years, we have just run down the capitalist ideal of just making money. So we have to think about ways how the things we produce, and even how the waste from it is used. And that's our way, and that's what we want to put to people. If you're going to jump into business, whether it be on the ocean or it be just starting a store online, how do you make it as eco-friendly as possible every step of the way. That's our challenge to you, and thank you.
So I'm assuming you're working with an environmental group in Jamaica?
Oh, many of them. Many of them. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much, Dean. Thank you for coming on and giving us great presentation. I look forward to seeing wonderful things for 2023. And I want to thank everybody for joining, and please come back next year. We hope to have more presentations, and reach out to us. We're on Twitter, we are on Instagram. If you have any questions, shoot out Dean or to anyone on the platform. So thank you once again for coming, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Ricardo.